I could say maybe because I didn't look up to my dad, I had to form my own inner dad to look up to.
Okay.
And that inner dad goes barefoot.
Is there someone that does inspire you?
A lot of films that are brought out in 2023 or in this new era, they're very matrixy, but I just think that a lot of people share a global consciousness. Everything in this society is pretend. I think everyone's born at the right time for them.
But does anyone actually really know you?
My grandpa actually has banned me from his property.
What?
I'm not allowed in his house anymore. A lot of security guards think the fact that I'm not wearing shoes is a reason to tackle me. But
So
you have
you
to
would
do
walk
certain
around
things.
naked if it was socially acceptable?
Yeah.
Hey guys, crack open a drink because we are back with another episode of the Blue Podcast with me, Mackers and Tom. How you doing, mate?
I'm well, thank you, mate. How are you today?
I'm not bad. Looking forward to our guest today. Today we've got George, better known as Barefoot Guy, an influencer and 365-day-a-year barefoot. How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
All right.
Yeah.
How do
Just
you?
alright, not exceptional?
Well, it depends on what level you're talking about. There are different there are different realms. Everyone is a universe made up of different dimensions. So you might be fine on one level and not fine on another level. Spiritually, I'm doing fine. But in terms of the day itself, all right.
All right. Fair enough.
This is going to be fascinating, isn't it? I can't wait for today's episode. This is going to be brilliant.
All right, so as always, we'll crack into the icebreaker questions. Multiple choice. Me and Tom will ask 2 questions. The other 2 people, if they get it wrong, just have a big old sip of the beer just to get this stuff.
I've already been sipping it, so
Perfect.
ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Tom, do you want to kick us off? What's the topic?
I'll kick things off. Well, today's topic is feet. Obviously, it would make sense since we have the Barefoot Guy on the show today. So my first question is going to be, how many feet do spiders have? Is it A, 8? Is it B, 16? Or C, 0?
I want to go 0 because do they have feet or do they have like claws?
I mean, I'd have to say 0 as well because I feel like they just have like
Pointy bits.
pointy legs that are like, because they've got 8 of them, they don't really need feet because feet are for stability. So
The thing is, if the Blue Podcast has anything to go by, Tom loves a trick question. Yeah. I'm going to go
Final answer, 0?
Yeah, 0.
0.
It's 8. They actually do have feet on the bottom. That's how they do the sticky
All
stuff.
right. Cheers, mate.
All right.
Just to preface, this is kind of, we tend to tell people when we're drinking, 11:35 in the morning on a Saturday. So,
Just standard drinking hours, really, isn't
yeah.
it?
100%. All right. My question 1 is, the bones in your feet make up how much of the human skeleton? Is it A, almost a quarter, B, almost a third, or C, almost an eighth?
Oh, and it's 33 bones in the foot.
I'm going to say almost a quarter.
What are you saying?
What were the other 2 options? A quarter, a something, and an eighth?
Almost a third, or
A
almost
third,
an
a quarter,
eighth?
an eighth. An eighth.
An eighth?
Yeah.
So unsurprisingly, the Barefoot Guy knows feet, so it's almost a quarter.
I should have just gone with the expert, shouldn't I? Really?
I'm not an expert.
No,
Honestly, feet is a small part of my whole reality.
which we're looking forward to getting into on the podcast.
We are indeed, yeah. Okay, I'm going to take a bit of a different spin for my second question.
Okay.
Serial killer Jerry Brudos
Where's this going?
became infamous for collecting the severed feet of his victims. What was he more commonly referred to as? Is he the shoe fetish slayer? Is he B, the foot fetish slayer? Or is he C, the Kingston Ripper?
I'd assume the foot fetish slayer because it's to do with feet, but
Yeah, I'll go with that.
It's actually the shoe fetish slayer. I just put the
Ah.
foot fetish one in there to throw you boys off.
Oh,
I think that requires a drink since.
oh
you
yeah,
got the
sorry, I
answer
forgot about that part.
Jesus Christ. Oh, do we have to cheers every time?
Well, it's
It's going to feel like
if you both
Groundhog
get
Day
it,
in a
yeah,
second.
yeah. To be fair, it's just one more question to go.
Big John, one of our guests before, he introduced it as it's like a thing we'll do now. And 2 people get it wrong, you cheers. But
Okay. I'm
Just a
happy with
fun
that.
little addition to the show.
yeah, exactly. And then evolving as we go, really.
Exactly.
Final question of the icebreaker questions. There's a record for sniffing the most feet and armpits. How many feet did Madeleine Albrecht, I'm probably getting that name wrong, at Ohio Labs in smell? How many feet did she smell?
Do we have?
Over 15 years, so that's just a bit of context. 2,300 feet, 5,600 feet, or 7,200 feet. Little fun fact.
7,200.
7,200.
I'm backing the expert. 7,200.
Not quite as many as 7,200. It's 5,600.
George, what are you doing?
But but with the armpits, she actually sniffed so many armpits they couldn't keep track.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is,
Christ, what? Anyway, cheers to that. It's happening all over again.
all right, so let's get into the juicy podcast. Obviously, you are barefoot. You said you've just over a year now.
Yeah, year and 3 months. I think.
Year and 3 months.
Coming up for that.
All right. So
I don't really keep track anymore. It's
just how it
it's
is.
just life.
And obviously, people want to know what caused it. From my research, I found that you were on a hike. Am I right?
Yeah, that's
And
not what caused
what
it.
caused it, but that was the start, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, the start was kind of like brain damage.
Oh.
As a child.
Do you want to get into that?
Genuinely, or is that? I think you're joking, but
I think everyone's brain is damaged by the way we're brought up in this society.
Okay.
And it's just like addressing the balance of that, I guess.
So what do you think in your childhood causes the brain damage?
Issues with family.
Okay.
Feeling like an outsider from the get-go sort of thing. So I think I've always felt like an outsider, so I don't really care about doing things that are more of an outsider thing to do. Like not wearing shoes doesn't bother me because I've never felt like part of a tribe before in this society. So I guess I'm making my own tribe. That's what this is about.
Well, that was going to be sort of one of my questions. Is obviously you came here today barefoot because of course you did. Did you get any stares from the public? You know, if you're going on public transport or anything like that, or does it just wash over you now?
I mean, it's entertaining. Like all the reactions are entertaining, but most of the time I don't notice because it's like when you experience something all the time, it just doesn't. Your short-term memory doesn't remember it.
Yeah.
Like I never remember when I've locked my front door. I never remember that I've done it. I have to go back and check.
I'm exactly the same. Yeah.
Because you do it all the time, so you just don't actually think about it.
Yeah. No. And then sometimes I lock my car, and then I'll be like, "Did I lock my car?" Kind of, literally just locked up to get back in the house, then I have to go outside, unlock the door again, and it's frustrating. I actually have quite poor short-term memory anyway, so that's it's a difficult thing for me. And I mean, obviously, you do TikTok and you do kind of street interviews. TikTok's very much a thing where you watch something and kind of, let's say you've watched TikTok for about 45 minutes. You probably can't remember the first thing you watched. You probably can't remember the last thing you watched. But you actually came up on my TikTok feed once and you did stick in my head because obviously you were talking about feet. And it's a very...
Is that a trigger point for you?
No, it's just actually interesting. And obviously that's why I reached out to you and thought it would be great to get you on the podcast. And doing my research, kind of your view on life's very... I'd say positive, although it may be coming from, as you said, you weren't really part of a tribe, and yet you've seemed to have developed positively now that you are barefoot, kind of very very comfortable in your own skin, literally. But yeah, I wanted to. What was the moment when you decided to go barefoot?
That wasn't a walking holiday.
No.
And I was just on a walk. And I just randomly thought to myself, why am I wearing shoes?
Yeah.
But obviously normal people don't have thoughts like that. So I think the more interesting bit is why I would even have a thought like that in the first place.
Do you know why you had that thought? Just because of the bad upbringing maybe, or?
Well, I didn't have a bad upbringing.
Okay.
I had a good upbringing for me because it's made me more of who I want to be. But then again, I don't know who I'd be if I had a perfect, so-called perfect upbringing. But I don't think you can have a perfect upbringing in this society because you're going to be fucked up by one thing or the other. If it's not daddy issues, then it's mummy issues.
Yeah.
Or if your family is seemingly normal, then you have problems at school. Or this society is just problematic. So everyone's bound to have their own struggles. And I think those struggles are not necessarily a bad thing because they force you to grow into another person that's more comfortable in their own skin because you can't be comfortable with this society unless you really numb yourself to it. So you've got to be comfortable with in your own skin or you're just going to die.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And would you say social media is a big factor in that nowadays? Or can it be used in a positive way like how you're doing it?
Yeah. I think the way I look at my phone is like this thing right here. This is a ring of power. Do you know Lord of the Rings?
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is like the one ring. So I'm Frodo. We're all Frodos carrying the burden of the one ring. Because this can bind everyone, but if you have the power to harness it, you can basically control the world. It's the ultimate ring of power. But it's heavy as fuck. It's light. It's light, but when I have this thing in my pocket, it feels heavy. It feels like it's weighing me down. But not literally, metaphorically. But you feel that weight physically.
Okay. I hadn't thought about it like that.
That's why it's nice to go out without a phone.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
Wait, do you do that? Ever go out without your phone?
I can't say I do, but I've spoken about on here my experience in America, where I basically didn't have a phone for 10 weeks.
Sure.
And I personally really enjoyed it, but kind of when I got back, didn't stop me from going back on my phone. And obviously doing social media now and stuff, it's pretty important to be on your phone. But how do you get that balance then? Because you said it's a ring of power. But how do you get the balance right with your phone then?
You have to... I think a lot of people, they just pick up their phone in a spare moment because they can't think of anything else to do, and it's like a habit. But I've tried to be aware of myself in those moments when I'm wanting to pick up my phone. And I think to myself, why do I actually want to pick up my phone? And if there's no valid reason for that, then I don't pick it up. But if I do have a valid reason, like I need to call this person for this reason, then I pick it up.
Okay.
No, I
Stick to
understand
one
that.
thing.
Absolutely, because there are moments I'll recognise where I might be watching TV or something and I'll still reach my phone even though I'm completely entertained by what's going on, just because it's a habit. It's
like a
habitual.
drug addiction.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do in that spare time? So when you're thinking to yourself, like you get that thought of like, oh, I'm going to pick up my phone. Okay, I'm going to stop myself doing that. What do you do instead? Do you just like spend a moment of silence, or like say you're going on your phone for not an essential reason, like you're not making a call, you're just there to scroll, right? What do you do instead?
It's quite a difficult question because I've been in this mindset for a long time, so I'm just naturally doing other things. I don't have that urge to pick up my phone. I have more of an urge to engage in my immediate surroundings. So it could be that I'm looking at a building or something that looks really interesting. It opens up your creativity and your imagination and seeing the world in a more beautiful way.
No, it's really
Because
interesting, yeah.
I'm trying to explain myself properly. Unless you create space in that moment, you're never going to realize what there is to appreciate around you. If you're always filling up the space with going on your phone or something, then you never even get the opportunity to see what else could be in that space.
Okay.
Because often if you just sit with the space, things come up of their own accord. You might see a person or a building or a sign. Anything could happen in a moment if you just let it be.
So I'm guessing then something that me and Tom quite like to do is we listen to music or a podcast, let's say when we're on our way to the studio. Are you, when you're on your way on public transport or something, do you no headphones?
I don't like headphones.
Okay.
That's partly because I have an earwax problem, and wearing headphones stimulates wax production, so I tend to avoid headphones in general. But on public transport, I like to just look at people and look at whatever's going on around me, because I find that more mentally stimulating than going on my phone or something. Yeah,
I mean, there's definitely lots of different characters in London. I mean, are you based in London?
No,
Oxford.
Cambridge. Yeah.
So, I knew it was one of Oxford or Cambridge. I just slipped my mind. But do you travel into London a lot? Do you have to travel a lot with what you do?
I don't have to, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Because it gets quite... In Cambridge, people are very pent up.
Okay.
So when you want to get videos...
in Cambridge, how do you mean pent up?
People aren't willing to get in videos because people take themselves too seriously. And then when you get them in a video, it's like they don't know how to loosen up and just go with the flow. They're very like... I mean, I guess that's what creates an interesting contrast, because I'm so loose in the videos and the people who I interview are going to be quite pent up. So it's like funny to watch the two energies working together.
Yeah.
Okay. And with your street interviews and what you do on TikTok and stuff, how was that first step into getting? What do you film on?
Canon camera,
Okay, so
DSLR.
so you got someone with the Canon. So this is your first street interview. How did that first step come about into stepping into social media? And
Me and a friend who's now doing quite well off his own back. Do you know Oshu, Josh Robinson?
yes, I do. Yes, I do. He
Yeah.
he was on your story, I think,
Yeah,
yesterday. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, or maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we decided that we wanted to do something. Well, he wanted to do YouTube,
Mm.
and I wanted to do something in social media, but I didn't know quite what. And so we decided to do a joint YouTube channel for a while, which we did random stuff on, like pranks and challenges and all sorts of stuff. And then after that, I saw this app called TikTok,
Mm.
and I said to Josh, we should do a joint account. So we started doing these videos where we were touching people's hands on the escalator. So I'd be
Nice.
like touching people's hands on the escalator, part 1. And then one of us would record, one of us would do it.
Yeah.
And we just did weird shit like that,
Yeah.
like stupid stuff. But it got views, and I was like, well, if we keep doing this, then we can make something out of it. But then it got to a point, we were growing the account, but it got to a point where I thought, this is not really what I want to be doing, because I'm just making random videos. And so I felt like I wasn't being authentic to myself.
Yeah.
Then after that, I split off for a while. I didn't do anything. Maybe for a whole year, I didn't do any social media. No, I was living life. I had a Nokia phone, so I couldn't. I didn't even have the option to go on my phone. It's like a distraction. So I was just purely in the moment, living life, not thinking about anything. No education, nothing. And then it was in that period that I was going through a lot of mental struggles. And then I was at a hotel in Plymouth,
Okay.
near Plymouth. And that's when I thought, I don't want to wear shoes anymore. I was just at a point where I was so done with society that it was like a step that seemed obvious for me, because it makes life better. For me, it makes my life so much more engaging, because I'm someone that's quite difficult to stimulate mentally. I can't watch many films. It takes a really good film to captivate me. So I think I'm just quite hard to please. And so me going barefoot is like fulfilling my need to just experience more than normal.
Fair enough.
Because I think we're so limited in the society on what experiences we can have. We're meant to be feeling the air against our skin. We don't even get that nowadays. You have to wear like a shirt or something.
Mm.
We're just very dumbed down, I think. We should be experiencing a lot more.
Fair enough. I mean, I wanted to kind of talk about my kind of similar experience with barefoot. Just to kind of pick your brain a bit as well, because I worked barefoot for 2 months in Cos, because I was working on the beach with rocks and sand, and I know kind of the first, say, 5 or 6 days when you're barefoot walking on, for example, the pavement and things like that, your feet are very, very sore, because obviously they're not used to it. I'm guessing you had that similar experience.
Yeah.
And then kind of as the days go on, your feet get a lot stronger, calluses form, the keratin starts to build up. And to be fair, I think my work colleagues would say I was a bit more of a wet wipe for longer than I'm going to say. But by the end, it was pretty easy. I mean, I was walking down streets barefoot after work because you could. And that's why I do slightly... I do agree with the fact that you can go barefoot and it will work. The only thing that ever got me was glass. So, have you got the awareness to avoid it, or?
It's a bit of both. I think my number one strategy is just looking at where I'm going.
Yeah.
Because although I shouldn't have a problem with glass because I've got a thick sole. I still look where I'm going because I can avoid getting any potential glass stuck in my foot. But even if I do, it's inevitable sometimes, you're going to get a thorn or something stuck in your foot. It just works its way out or heals up.
Yeah.
Makes a little hard case around around the thorn or bit of glass under the skin, so it doesn't hurt or anything.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it sends a message to your brain that says, build up this callus, because you're obviously still getting, it's still penetrating.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because that was the thing that got me. I was walking around in Cardamina in Cos and kind of feeling almost invincible with my feet bare, and then just tiniest little piece of glass just went straight up my heel, and I was flip flops back on.
yeah, and it's painful for
Yeah.
a couple of days, but if you kept walking on it and went through the pain, your soul would toughen up a lot quicker than if you hadn't have had that glass stuck in there, because it tells your body to respond immediately.
Is it almost like gymming then? Because obviously with gymming, you break down the muscle
and
to build it back up. Yeah.
Going to the gym is not a painless process.
No, definitely not.
I tried it for like 3 or 4 months, the lifestyle of eating as much as I possibly could, going to the gym every day. I was just in pain the whole time. I don't think it's worth it, because you start to feel trapped in your body as well.
Okay. I would slightly disagree with that personally, as I like to go to the gym, but I think it just also may be, I know friends who, similar to you, will start going to the gym, and it's not for everyone. It's like how so many things aren't for everyone. And yeah, that's an interesting thing to feel trapped in your body when you go into the gym.
I guess it's because you're putting up, the way I was doing it, I was trying to just put on as much weight as possible.
Okay.
So I was eating to the point where, like, I want to throw up, but I have to keep eating because that's the only way I'm going to gain size.
Okay.
And it just got so monotonous, because every day I feel more sluggish than I usually do, just because I'm having to eat so much.
Okay.
Whereas if I'm going on the other side of life, like not eating so much, doing yoga and stretching my body and going for runs, it makes me feel a lot more free. I need to feel gay, to do my videos, to make art. You have to have that openness.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, well,
you have to be like a conduit for energy.
Yeah.
And to do that, for me, I can't do it with the gym. I'd love to go to the gym, because I got such a buzz out of it, but it's not sustainable for me.
Okay, it's fair
If
enough.
I was living multiple lives in parallel, I'd have one life where I went to the gym and one where I was just doing my own thing.
No, that's nice. Yeah, you gonna say something?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to touch on. So obviously, you guys have spoken about how the foot can adapt to like stepping on glass or thorns or whatever. But I just want to touch on more like the infection side of it. Have you ever experienced, athlete's foot, or ever developed like a fungal growth, anything like that?
No,
Never, because that is a possibility, though, isn't it?
Maybe. I just think that if your feet are open in the open air, then there's probably less chance of getting an infection or fungal growth than if you're wearing shoes. I think the danger comes when you expose yourself to the environment and then put shoes on.
Okay.
Because you're going to be picking up infection, well, all sorts of things from the ground, and then you're going to put your feet in a warm, moist environment, which is perfect for bacteria to thrive. So I think I'd be more worried about going barefoot and then wearing shoes.
Sorry to interrupt this fantastic podcast, but we have an amazing offer for you guys. Firstly, thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video, which is the world's largest online therapy service. To get started, you just need to answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you. More scheduling flexibility, and it's at a more affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/thebluepodcast, and I've also linked them below in the description. It also really helps us out back on with the podcast.
It's more dangerous to go barefoot and then go to like a moist environment and go back into your shoes afterwards.
Yeah.
Definitely. If you're going to wear shoes, you got to make sure your feet are clean to begin with. But if you never wear shoes, then it doesn't really matter.
That's fair enough. Because, athlete's foot is from exercising, causing your feet to sweat, and then not clean them afterwards, if I'm correct.
Yeah, but that's only if you're going to wear shoes.
Yeah.
Because obviously they just dry and clean themselves in the sunlight and the air.
Okay. But moving on to kind of you were talking about that's what you do yoga. So is that how you? Because you're in good shape. Is it yoga and stretching and running? How is running barefoot as well?
It's just the whole experience. It feels like that's how running's meant to feel.
Okay.
When you wear shoes, you think that's the running experience, but it really isn't at all. Running is like a whole body activity, and you miss half of it when you wear shoes. Obviously, if you've always worn shoes, it's going to be painful as fuck, which is going to be a block for most people. But I didn't actually start running until after a year or so of going barefoot, just walking, because I used to run a lot in shoes, and then when I went barefoot, it was too painful to run. But as I built it up for a year, now I can run barefoot in the same way that I ran with shoes, but better.
Yeah.
It's just a question of time and adaptation.
Would you say you're faster barefoot?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh really?
Yeah. It's a different action. It's kind of like running like an ostrich, because you're prancing, putting one foot in front of the other, kind of like that. Okay. So it's just, you really feel alive doing it.
A bit more like a sprinter then, because sprinters push off with their toes rather than their heels. Whereas a lot of people, when they're running with trainers, they'll put their heel down first.
Heel striking.
Yeah.
It's just a big misconception that you should heel strike. The only reason you can do that is because you have so much padding in a shoe, so it lets you do that. If you didn't have the shoe and try heel striking, you're going to feel that pain all the way up your body.
Yeah.
So that's not how you run.
No,
quite simply.
Well, I want to touch on as well. So obviously you've spoken before in a podcast that you have this persona that's the barefoot guy. That's not who you are. You're just George, right? So
I'm not even George. I'm just no one.
Do you want to expand on that?
Well, I don't think a name identifies a person. It's a box to put that person in, because it makes it easy to refer to someone. But we can't reduce ourselves to names. We're all infinite beings. We're infinite monkeys.
Okay.
We're capable of anything.
Does a name restrict you to just being less than that?
No, but a name shouldn't be a box. It should just be a tool.
Is that not what it is?
Calling someone. I guess so. But I think some people use words as boxes instead of just using them as tools.
Okay. Yeah, so not being able to escape the box that people have put you in to an extent.
Yeah.
For example, for me, I'm Tom. I can only do what Tom does.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
But that's just a concept.
Yeah. Okay.
You can do anything in reality. You could wake up tomorrow and be a different person. And people might judge you for it because they'll say, that's not Tom.
Yeah.
What happened to Tom? Because Tom's that little box there.
Yeah.
But then you can make a new box, find new people, and they'll put you in a new box.
Okay. That's an interesting concept to look into.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of people who have, like, there's a standard running joke that you have different personalities with different groups of friends. But is that sort of what you're referring to? That one group of friends will have this image of you in their mind, and then you can't escape that. But I'd argue then that you can, because you can change your personality bit by bit to become a better person.
Yeah. You can slowly morph into another person so the people immediately around you don't notice. But then you can also make that transformation immediately. If there's a person you want to become, you could become that person immediately, but it would be too shocking for the people around you.
Okay.
But for instance,
but then you might lose those people around you because they'll think, well, I don't like that version of Tom or George. But then you'll gain new people who are more in line with who you actually are.
Okay.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That does make sense. But so who are you then? Besides, so your friends that know you're George, and you walk barefoot every single day. So beyond that, what are you? Do you go home, like, after you film the public videos, do you play FIFA or do you meditate? What?
Go for a pint.
I do a lot of things. I'm not really closed-minded to anything. Like, some days I might be, I might want to play games or something.
Yeah.
I'm not like a gamer, but I'm just saying I will do anything. I'll just go where the day takes me. And if that day means I play on an Xbox or something, then I'm all for it. It's just an experience. So I wouldn't like to define myself as a guy who meditates or does yoga, because one day I might feel like a completely different person. Today I felt like doing some stretching and having a shower in the morning, and that was enough.
Okay.
I'm a London person.
Yeah.
doing a podcast today. Tomorrow I'll be like, I could be a crack addict.
Is there any consistency in your life? Like, for instance, do you have porridge every day for breakfast? Is there any consistency at all?
I go through periods of having consistency with one thing and then changing it to a complete other thing. So when I wore shoes, I was very consistent with wearing shoes. I'd wear shoes in the house, outside, everywhere.
Okay.
And now I'm very consistent with not wearing shoes.
Okay, besides the obvious, yeah.
But that is like my whole life in general. Like, I'll be consistent with wearing one outfit for a long time and then switch it up completely. Or recently I've been having loads of omelettes and I've been very consistent with that. I have at least one omelette a day. But then that might change to having scrambled eggs every day instead, or having pancakes. It just goes with the different chapters in life.
Okay. Do you know what triggers those changes, do you think? Sorry, I know you're sipping your drink.
Yeah. I feel like you kind of build up to it over time. You slowly see all the things that aren't working about what you do currently. Well, this is the way I work. Things add up that subconsciously manifest one day as like, oh, I want to do this instead of doing it that way. And it's not that I've been thinking about it, but my subconscious mind has been mulling it over under the surface, and then suddenly a big change occurs. Like, I didn't just have the thought, I want to go barefoot. It was subconsciously being mulled over for probably years without me knowing, and then suddenly it manifests just like that in a day.
Okay.
So people think I do things suddenly. What you have access to consciously isn't necessarily what's going on under the surface, because you might literally tomorrow you wake up and have an idea that comes out of nowhere and it changes your life drastically.
Yeah.
But you have no idea where it came from, but it must have come from somewhere, and it's probably just a number of events have happened and you haven't thought about them consciously, but subconsciously it's been building up to that moment of taking action, like starting to eat omelettes every day.
I like the, because it's kind of the same thing how people can influence other people over time. It's, for example, I'd say our life's changed when we went to do the podcast. And that was that wasn't because of something that was mulled over time. But well, the initialization in 2020 was. And then kind of, would you say that things change more suddenly but smaller, and then the things that get mulled over time tend to be a bigger change?
Definitely. There's so many timelines all happening at once, but you might not realize how these events link together when it comes to the main thing. Like, you won't know exactly what events led up to you forming this podcast. You might have an idea of what events led up to that, but it could have been very specific conversations or just thoughts that come to you randomly that might have added up to you doing this. So you have an idea, a story in your head, but that's just a story.
Yeah.
It's not the reality necessarily.
Okay.
So would you say, therefore, that your decision to go barefoot was a culmination of everything you've ever experienced in your life,
Probably.
built up to one moment?
Exactly like that.
Is there anything
Yeah.
you can pinpoint? Or would you say that they're all so small that the compound of them is this, but there's no one majority factor?
I mean, I can make theories as to why I do the things I do. Like, I could say maybe because I didn't look up to my dad, I had to form my own inner dad to look up to.
Okay.
And that inner dad goes barefoot. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't want to call someone your father, if you don't want to call your actual father your father, you have to create some other father. Everyone needs a father, whether that's someone external or someone internal. And I guess because I've rejected the ideas of my own father, I've created ideas for my inner father.
And that would have affected you over time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to find a better way.
Yeah.
Healthier masculinity. Because I think there's a lot of unhealthy masculinity. So it's really up for grabs how to be as a person.
Yeah.
Because I don't think anyone's figured it out how to be the best person. It's just life is a puzzle.
If you had to, in your own life or anything, is there someone that does inspire you in some way?
A lot of people, I'll read something and it really resonates with me. Like a lot of stuff I read from Carl Jung, philosopher
I can't say it.
resonates. Or George Orwell, written a couple of books,
Heard the name, yeah.
like 1984.
1984.
Everyone knows
Yeah.
1984. You watch that and you're like, shit, that could be what we're living in right now.
Mm.
So I guess I relate to things like that. But a lot of stuff, I feel like a lot of these Netflix originals, I'm going off on a tangent here.
No,
but,
go
That's
for
fine.
it.
Go for it.
a lot of films that are brought out in 2023 or in this new era, they're very matrixy. They're very like in constraints. They're in a little box. Like everyone acts a certain way. There's no like wild things that happen. I remember films used to be very open and things would happen that would be like larger than life. But a lot of films today are very in a box. It's like you can't do certain things. Even if it's a story, you can't do certain things. Like now there's this whole agenda of creating diversity in films. So you know that a certain role is played by a black person, a certain role is played by a white person or an Asian person because they're trying to fulfill criteria
They've got
for this
criteria
day and
to-
age.
Yeah.
And every film nowadays has that criteria to fulfill. That's just one aspect of it. There's so many other things. Like a film might have to follow certain agendas that are happening in the real world. You can't make a film that goes against what's happening, or it won't be mainstream. A lot of the
Yeah.
mainstream films are all very much for the global narratives and what's going on in the world, and would make you think, oh, we're living in such a nice, happy, jolly time. But it's quite the opposite.
Do you have an example in mind? Because obviously I understand what you're saying. There's definitely a Hollywood template, and because of the sheer amount of films that have been produced over the last like 100 years, then there's definitely rehashings of the same plots and the same narratives. But do you have a specific example when you're talking about films being put into a box and they can't go outside the box with their creative license?
I don't think it needs to be analysed, to be honest. I think it is what it is.
But do
No
you have an
further
example
discussion
of
required.
any film?
I mean, every film is within a box as such, because when you're creating something, when you're creating anything, you're working with your own mental constraints. So if you believe a certain thing, then that's going to come across in your films. Like if you believe that we should all be moving towards this globalist society where there's a one world government, not to get deep, I don't want to get political about this. But if you believe in stuff like that, that's going to come through in the art that you create.
But wouldn't that make every film different based upon their filmmaker?
Oh yeah, for sure. But I just think that a lot of people share a global consciousness, and so it would take a very specific filmmaker to make a film that is more objective in this reality, because things are built on layers and layers of lies, effectively. Like our society, I keep burping.
It's fine.
Don't worry, mate.
Your fault for giving me.
Yeah.
Everything in this society is pretend, basically. Like all civilization ever is pretend. It's like theater. And so everything that you see is built on foundations of lies, because that's what theater is. It's effectively lies. But we don't mind that. It's not a bad thing. When you go to watch a play or a movie, you know that the whole thing's a lie, but it's still entertaining.
It's the thought of what if, almost.
It's
an
that
escape,
keeps you
an
going.
escape.
Yeah. The what if keeps everyone going, because anything could happen in theory, but then I feel like in this day and age, there's just less and less chance of anything happen because everything's so compartmentalized and in a specific box. Like, you know, if you get on a train, it's going to go to the destination that it's set out to go to. Maybe 500 years ago, you might have gotten on a train and it could be owned by anyone, run by anyone, and you might end up anywhere. You might be kidnapped. I feel like there was more chance of random things happening 100 years ago or 500 years ago as opposed to today. Everything's very set out. Things do still happen, but you have to put yourself in those situations. For most people, they wake up, do a 9-to-5 job, and their days are just Groundhog Day, basically.
Yeah.
They're very, very predictable. But it doesn't have to be like that. And it's becoming more and more like that as time goes on, because obviously it makes sense if we want to live in a society with a good economy it's better if everyone is robotic about the way they live their life, like turning up to work every day at this particular time, because that's good for the economy, but it doesn't mean it's good for humans.
It's not good for their mental health, almost.
No.
Yeah. This is a question that I just thought of, because you spoke about 500 years ago, everything was much more random, and anything literally could happen. You could wake up with smallpox and die the next day, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
But would you rather have lived 500 years ago or be living today?
I think everyone's born at the right time for them.
Okay.
And I think that it's things, maybe 500 years ago, I would have found a different sense of meaning. But the fact is, I'm here right now. I was born in 2002. And that's how it is. There's no changing that. And so I wouldn't like to even reference myself 500 years ago, because it's just not applicable.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
you
here.
were blown up on TikTok 500 years ago. That's
Well, yeah, but I
Yeah.
might have still been a performer to some degree. I might have been on the stage, because that is where I want to be ultimately. Before I did TikTok, I did acting, but then I realized that acting wasn't working out very well, because I was playing characters on top of my own character, my own existing character.
Okay.
We aren't aware that we're all playing characters, and then if you try to act, you start playing a character on top of your already developed character, and then it doesn't really work. That's when it doesn't look genuine. It looks like you're acting. A good actor doesn't act. They are that
They
person.
become that character.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And
so
it's an
almost
art.
method acting
It's not like something that's. It is straightforward, but it's so straightforward that it's not. It's like algebra. I could never understand it because it's so simple. And acting is so simple. Being someone else is so simple, but so hard at the same time, so mystical.
Yeah.
Like, everyone has thoughts about who they want to become, things that they don't like about themselves, their personality, but why can't they just change them just like that? It doesn't work. It does work, but there's like there's mental blocks or something that stop people from just changing instantly.
There's only certain people in the world that can do it to a particularly good level.
I guess so. Maybe it's a gift, being able to just change like that.
Well,
But a lot of people are very stuck in their characters that they're playing.
Okay. Well,
Like people who work at Tesco, for example. I don't want to put anyone down, but if you're working at Tesco for 20 or 30 years, you're clearly happy playing that one character. And I think for me, I have a need to play different characters with everyone, every situation. Doesn't mean I'm acting all the time. I'm not acting. This is just different types of expression.
Okay. Well, you
Sorry,
talk
that was a big one.
No,
That's
it's
good,
okay.
that's
It's okay. You talk about projecting these different characters, and but does anyone actually really know you, or rather, can anybody really truly know somebody else if all of society is just individuals projecting different versions of themselves?
It's an interesting thing. I don't think anyone can know anyone fully, because it's only really based on how much you can express yourself. If you can't express yourself authentically, then how's anyone going to get to know any part of you? So a lot of people might know, it's quite depressing to think about, a lot of people who you know and you might be friends with, they might know a version of yourself that's completely fabricated, because you're being a person in that situation, not consciously maybe, but you're still putting on a role for that particular person. And so you're friends with each other's characters that you're playing, but maybe you're not friends with each other's souls. It just stops at that surface level. And I have this fear about all my interactions, or not interactions, but my friendships, whether they're surface level or not, because it's quite hard to know in the moment, because you can relate to someone on the surface level and feel like it goes deeper, but then it takes a long time to really figure out whether you are connected via souls.
Well, you've touched on before about how your family sort of affected your upbringing and stuff like that, but I want to take it back a level or bring it more to a surface level, should I say? And what do they think about you living barefoot, and also your friends as well?
On my mum's side of the family, they're very against it. But not my mum. My mum is fully on board with it, so it's funny that should be the way it is. But my grandpa actually has banned me from his property.
What?
I went for a run, and then I came back in the kitchen, and I wasn't wearing a shirt, wasn't wearing shoes, obviously. Sorry. And my grandpa said, I don't want a bare man in my house. Those are his words. And then I was like, okay, I don't really know how to reply to that. So I went and had a shower, got myself ready for the day. And I came back downstairs, and my mum, my aunt, and my grandpa are all arguing about my whole barefoot thing or whatever the hell they were talking about. But that obviously came up because when I came downstairs, they were questioning me. Not my mum, but my grandpa and my aunt were teaming up on me effectively, trying to say that what I'm doing is wrong, and basically trying to provoke a reaction in me or something, or finally give in and say, okay, I'll wear shoes, or some shit like that. I don't know what the fuck they wanted. But then after that, my grandpa blew up at me. And that was it. I'm not allowed in his house anymore.
Wow. Do you get these sort of negative reactions a lot? I mean, you do a lot of public interviews, so have you ever had like a really, obviously because you can't post all the people you interview, right? So have you ever had a particularly negative reaction to it?
Not so much in the people who I interview. It's more like I'll get like a random security guard or something who won't like the fact that I'm barefoot. And I think it's not a coincidence why people get into these jobs, why people become policemen or security guards. I think a lot of them just want that as an outlet because they can get physical with people within the law. As a security guard, in theory, you can, if there's a reason to, you can tackle someone. And a lot of security guards think the fact that I'm not wearing shoes is a reason to tackle me. And so I've had issues with security guards where they've literally beaten me up because they think it's justified because I seem like a threat because I'm not wearing shoes. Like I went to see the Ed Matthews, who was it? Ed Matthews Simple Simon boxing match. And I had a VIP invite. I promoted Kingpin Boxing on my story, and that was how I got a ticket. And when I was there, it got to literally the Ed Matthews and Simon, which was at the end. And I got, there was a security guard next to me, and he said, you need to sit down. But I couldn't find a seat. And then he looked at my feet, and suddenly he just flipped. It was like that triggered him to go full aggression mode. And he grabbed me, and then they got a bunch of other security guards, and they all picked me up and carried me outside. And when I was outside the O2, they were still there pinning me down and like holding me in funny positions. I was literally saying like, I'm in pain, like stop. Because they were like, as they were carrying me out, they had like my arm and like twisted. And so I have to deal with shit like that just because I'm not wearing shoes. Jesus. But it's okay because it gives me something to talk about.
It's good for a podcast, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd hope that someone from the O2 would see that and think, well, that definitely shouldn't happen. And then the next time someone's barefoot inside the premises, the security guards know not to tackle them. Because I feel like we live in a society where people think that it's progressive and that we don't have any issues with discrimination. But actually, we live in a society where you're discriminated against unless you fit into a certain box. It's like if you're part of the LGBT community, that's fine. But if you go and do your own thing, if you're the barefoot guy, that's not okay because that doesn't fit into one of the prescribed boxes.
Okay.
It's like if you hold views in a certain way of thoughts, like you're a Christian or you're part of the LGBT community.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep using that as an example, but it's almost like these tribes have been given the seal of approval by society. Like if you're a member of that community, you're approved by society, but being barefoot, you're not approved because there's no prescribed community that goes barefoot. Okay. There is no barefoot community. There's no barefoot rights.
Yeah.
It's just this guy's doing something outside the matrix. Let's punish him for it. That seems to be like the mentality of society. It's like witch hunting sort of thing. Anyone doing something different who holds different beliefs, they're prosecuted for it.
Yeah, and that's something that's happened all throughout history, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
On the kind of subject of the barefoot community, have there been people who've been inspired to go barefoot from you?
maybe a couple of friends. They've been more open to it because of me. And I often get story or people mention me in their story, and they'll be going barefoot somewhere. So I guess it gives people that confidence to know that it's not entirely outside of what's socially acceptable. People were like, well, if the barefoot guy's doing it to such a level, then it's okay if I just walk down my street barefoot. It gives people that extra comfort zone, because if no one was doing it and it wasn't a known about thing, it would be even more scary to do something outside of the existing matrix.
Okay. And this is a slightly different spin, this question. Is obviously you've mentioned how it's affected you, kind of your family, how it's affected kind of your experience with security guards and with the public. But how has it affected your love life? It's
weird because I really struggled to find people who I could connect with when I wore shoes. And I think it's because the more you fit in, the more that you can find yourself going down these rabbit holes with people who aren't really on your wavelength. But because you look the same and you dress the same, you can kind of get past those barriers. But because I'm not wearing shoes, a lot of people will say, oh, that guy's weird, I would never hang out with him. But then if I was wearing shoes, I might hang out with that person, and it would take me longer to figure out that I'm not really meant to be spending time with that person. And so it's almost like a great filter. It helps you to find the people who are really right for you quicker than if you were fitting in with everyone for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Because if someone has a problem with my feet, then why would I want to be associating with them? Because clearly they don't know who I really am, and they don't want to get to know who I really am.
So in essence, it's actually helped.
100%. I've found a lot more people since I've done it who I like more. I felt like I was always surrounded by a group of people who I didn't really get on with, because that's like, you adapt to do that because you need friends. You can't just go through life without friends. But it's easy to have the wrong friends. I think most people would choose the wrong friends over having no friends. And I always just chose the wrong friends. But doing this has made me sort of immune to choosing the wrong friends, because those wrong friends wouldn't want to hang out with me because I'm expressive with the way I actually am. This is just who I am. There's no filter. And so it puts a lot of people off, or it attracts the right people. It's like Marmite. You know for sure.
Marmite fan, or
You either love it or you hate it.
Do you
me.
love it?
Do you love it?
You hate it?
Oh,
You're about to say, I don't really care.
It's funny because I use that as an analogy, but I actually don't really, I don't love it or hate it.
That kind of breaks the analogy,
But
doesn't
I'll have it.
Yeah.
That's a metaphor for my life. Marmite.
Are you a lover or a hater?
I hate it, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I fall into society's dictation of whether I love it or hate it, and I definitely hate it.
Oh, I quite like it, to be honest. I love a Marmite toast in the morning.
We just the essence of society right here, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, last question.
Yeah.
Just before we wrap things up, bit of a silly one. If someone buys you a pair of socks for Christmas, would you try them on just for their approval?
Maybe. Yeah. Just as a thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not against, it's not like if something touches my foot, I'm like, get it off. I need to remain barefoot 24/7. It's no big deal. I just like doing it. So why wouldn't you continue to do something that you like doing? So I don't really deep it. Like, I might wear a pair of shoes just for fun because people don't see me in shoes. So it's like, what the fuck, he's wearing shoes.
I like that. It's kind of a fun way to kind of play with the fact that you are barefoot to an extent.
Like, to my friends, I'd look weirder if I was wearing shoes than if I wasn't.
Yeah.
So if I suddenly turned up with shoes, they'd be like, what the hell is going on?
Can I ask then, if you do wear shoes like very occasionally, is it comfortable to wear shoes because you're used to the sort of lack of comfort that you've gotten used to?
Well, for me, being barefoot is more comfortable now because that's just kind of how things work. When you adapt to something, it becomes the norm, and so doing the opposite is like the weird thing. So if I try and wear shoes, it feels like I'm carrying two weights on my foot. It'd be like imagine wearing a shoe on your hand. You'd be like, why have I got a shoe on my hand?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I have the same thing with my feet. It's like, why have I got this thing around my foot? Because it doesn't make sense to me to wear anything around my foot. It doesn't make sense to wear anything in general, really, unless it's just purely creative expression. But
So
you have
you
to
would
do
walk
certain
around
things.
naked if it was socially acceptable?
Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
I mean, that's a great note to end the podcast on.
Yeah, we don't want to cut you off.
No, but that-
unfortunately,
unfortunately with time,
I'll
dictates,
leave
yeah.
it at
yeah.
that. Keep people wanting more.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you very much for coming on, George. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to shout out, social media wise, or coming up anything big?
Anything big.
Cameras over there if you want.
Yeah.
Everything big is coming up. Just keep an eye out.
Do you want to put your socials in as well? Just
Well, we've got the TikTok, got
Yeah.
the YouTube.
I'm sure
got the
people will
Instagram.
find me.
yeah.
People
Yeah.
search the Barefoot Guy. They'll
Barefoot.
find
Yeah,
it.
if you search literally the Barefoot Guy on Google,
Yeah.
I come up. I am the
The
Barefoot Guy.
well,
No one else.
fair enough. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the next podcast. Make sure you subscribe if you're new around here. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Check out George. And there may be at some point a change for the week. We might have another video coming out on Fridays, but that's for the future. Another interesting guest coming on for next week. And cheers, guys.
Cheers.